Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me, Jeff. I am here to talk with you about traveling internationally with kids, one of my favorite topics. It can be stressful at times, and it requires some thoughtful planning, but it can be incredibly fun to see your child explore the world. So today, my goal is to reduce that stress, help you with the planning so that you can focus on the fun part. So with that, I'm going to get started. I chose a format of talking about this as a story. So we're going to follow this one family traveling through the world, different countries, as their child grows from a 6-month-old baby going to India in the winter for a few months to a 2-year-old toddler going to China on a family vacation. And then we'll go to an exciting safari in Kenya as an 8-year-old. And then finally, we're going to wrap up as an 18-year-old independently traveling to Mexico with their friends. The reason I wanted to do it this way is because each case builds on the last in a way that kind of introduces new considerations with age and then new risks with different destinations. And then as your child grows and becomes more independent, then the preparation looks a little bit different and they can participate differently. But before we jump into the cases, I wanted to talk with you about the resources that we have to plan ahead. So before you go, we ask that you please schedule a travel health consultation 4 to 6 weeks before leaving, and that allows a lot of time for planning ahead of time. And then it's really important to review your child's medical conditions and destination-specific risks, as these will become important as you travel. And then check the vaccine requirements and recommendations for your destination. Now, how are we going to do this? It sounds like a lot, but Allegro's here to help you. We do have travel health at Allegro. You can go to our website at the travel consultation. We have some e-visits, and you can use this website to schedule a visit. And Dr. Julie Wen is currently our travel health specialist, and she's amazing. Please do think ahead though, because she can book up. So if you want to get in with enough time to spare, then you'll have to kind of think ahead. Also on our website, we do have a few resources that you can explore. They're available to anybody. And one of them, pretty much my favorite resource right now, is Travel Health Pro. This is a UK-based website. And what you can do is put in the country, your itinerary where you're traveling. It'll bring up the latest news and alerts about your destinations, the vaccines that are recommended, and all kinds of other details that are really important. And I love this picture. It's just so beautiful. And CDC has a website as well called Travelers Health, and this is very similar. You'll put in the country that you want. And I do use this. I cross-check between the two websites to see if there's any like differences between the recommendations. So they're both useful. So with that, I'm just going to jump in. So we're going to do case one. You are traveling with your 6-month-old baby for the first time internationally in the winter. You're going to India and you ask your pediatrician for travel advice. Now, I don't know who's more excited here, my daughter at 6 months traveling for the first time or my husband who is just delighted to be doing this. The first thing that you'll discuss with your provider the is your child up to date on routine vaccines? By 6 months, baby has had a chance to get some really important vaccines. And the reason that why this matters so much is because babies are at increased risk for getting these vaccine preventable diseases and getting very sick and hospitalized from them. And international travel does definitely increase the risk of exposure. For travel-specific vaccines for India, we do early doses of certain vaccines that are given routinely later. So measles, mumps, and rubella MMR, and hepatitis A, which can cause, it's a foodborne illness that can cause liver inflammation and fevers. So these are typically given at 1 year, but can be given at 6 months and older. That's why it's kind of nice if you can wait until your baby is 6 months, they'll have these options. Now, these have to be repeated later after they turn 1, but in the meantime, your baby's protected. And especially with the measles outbreak right now, I think this is one of the really most important things that we talk about. And then other vaccines that we actually don't have in the US, but they do have in India. So if you are someone who travels back and forth a lot or stays for several months, you spend a lot of time with family, it is really nice to ask a trusted healthcare provider in India if they have these vaccines and would recommend them for your child. So typhoid is one of them to prevent typhoid fever. And this is good for 3 years after you get it before a booster is needed. We only have it for 2 years and up in the US, but not for babies. And then the BCG vaccine to prevent severe TB in really young infants, that is also available in India. And we just don't have that at all in the US currently. We do ask that you bring back records. This just helps us keep track of what vaccines babies had and sort of keep that tracking for you. And then the other consideration is winter travel. What vaccines are important for baby? Well, RSV comes to mind. RSV is a respiratory virus that can make babies really sick. We are now vaccinating moms, but it's seasonal. So if you were pregnant or had your baby kind of in the summertime, your baby may not have had an RSV vaccine. It's available to babies less than 8 months old entering their first RSV season. And we do have this at Allegro, so do please ask about this. And then flu is really important too. Flu can make babies really, really sick, and we can give it to babies 6 months and older. The first season that your baby is getting this vaccine, they do have to get two and about 4 weeks apart. So again, this planning really makes a lot of sense. For COVID-19, I would say just check the current guidelines, have a discussion with the provider. Now, timing of these vaccines really does matter because it takes several weeks to build immunity for children. 4 weeks gives us a good amount of time to enable this. And then, of course, 6 months, I get a lot of questions. Can we split these vaccines? Because there's so many, including the seasonal ones in the winter. So if you do plan ahead, then you can maybe avoid too many pokes on one day. The next thing that is really important to discuss, even in the winter time, is preventing diarrheal illness in infants. Kids, especially babies, can get really sick from diarrhea. So safe food and water practices are really important. If you're breastfeeding, that's great. Please keep doing that. That's very protective. You're not introducing any water in that case, so that's helpful. But if you are prepping formula, please boil or sterilize the water, or if you're feeding baby solids or giving them like water to drink, use safe water. And then careful hand hygiene before you feed and prep food for a baby. And this is soap and water. And if you don't have that, then just alcohol. And if diarrhea does happen, it's important to watch babies very carefully. Signs of dehydration may mean less wet diapers, babies feeling really sleepy and not as playful as usual, has dry mouth, and is just wanting to sleep all the time, no tears when they cry. These are alarm signs for babies, and they do need to be seen as soon as possible. Oral rehydration solution is key if diarrhea or vomiting occurs. So if you can carry something with you, that would be great. Then you don't have to think about it. Pedialyte powder is available to carry easily. There's no liquid in it. You just carry the powder, mix it in safe water. And of course, really important to know the nearest local clinic and hospitals because we would love to help you, but unfortunately, we can only help before you go and after you get back. So we are not able to offer even virtual visits during travel abroad. And then one other topic that's really important is mosquito precautions for baby because things like dengue, malaria, chikungunya, these are all considerations in India. Do avoid taking your baby out at peak mosquito times. Dawn and dusk are the two biggest times that I can think of. But if you do have to go out during these times, dress your baby in long sleeves, long pants, and that should help some. And then additionally, if you use mosquito nets, like over strollers and things like that, and at night when they're sleeping, that will protect baby as well. There are some mosquito repellents available, and these are safe for babies 2 months and older. You can use DEET-based repellent, about 20 to 30% is recommended. And picaridin is a really nice one too, better tolerated for especially for young ones. 5 to 20% is recommended. Now, I understand if you don't want to spray your baby with DEET or picaridin even. So there are lotions, and that tends to be a good option for the young ones. And then do consider permethrin-treated clothing and gear that will provide some extra protection. So this is a map. I just want to talk about this very quickly. This is just a malaria risk and prevention medicine recommendation for India. The orange parts are actually low risk. It's the red parts that are the high risk. And it is absolutely worth discussing this and looking at this map with your travel health provider so they can decide if your baby needs prevention medicine. Travel day with a baby can be challenging. So building in extra time is key. You will definitely be calmer if you have a little more time for things to not go exactly as expected. Know that passports are required for all children, including infants. And then if you are the only parent traveling and other parent isn't going with you, a notarized consent letter is needed. This is something that is not easily, we don't really think about this, but this is something that you'll have to plan ahead. And then a medical summary for any special health needs that your baby might need. And then if you are getting travel insurance, medical insurance, make sure that you have access to care abroad and are able to use your insurance. And then on the plane on the day of, one of the biggest questions that I get about airplane travel, international or not, is ear pressure relief. And if you just feed your baby, whether you're feeding nursing or feeding a bottle, something during takeoff and landing can help relieve that ear pressure. And then don't forget to pack your essentials in your carry-on because you will not have access to the other stuff. So any extra formula, breast milk, comfort items and diapers, plan way more diapers than you think you'll need, toys and blankets. This is my little 6-month-old reading her favorite book, Bear Snores on, and thankfully went pretty well. We do ask that please do not give your baby Benadryl or anything else that can make them really sleepy because the last thing you want is for them to have a problem on the airplane. And then just an overview of some things you might want to take with you for a travel health kit for a baby. Any daily medications and supplements, of course, but also if your baby gets a fever, to have easy access to that Tylenol or ibuprofen in liquid form. And then the oral rehydration packets we already talked about, diaper cream, lots of extra diapers, and any equipment that you think you might need. If your baby tends to get congested, you want that nasal suction device, take that with you. And then a thermometer if you want to have that to check temperature. Know when to seek help. For our baby, maybe less important, but less than 3 months, any fever that's 100.4 Fahrenheit or higher in really young infants should be checked out right away. And then, of course, persistent vomiting and or diarrhea, and then those signs of dehydration that we talked about, those are really important to get checked out immediately. And just to reiterate, those local clinics and hospitals are really important to identify before you travel. The last thing you want to do is scramble last minute. So with that, we are going home from India. Maybe not goodbye, maybe see you later. So we will jump into our second case. Now your baby's a cute toddler, 2-year old, and you decide to go on a family trip to China in the summer. This is my daughter on a trip somewhere. She had just figured out the joys of shopping, which has persisted into age 13 now. So what are the new vaccine considerations for a 2-year-old? We do give measles, mumps, and rubella twice, once around age 1, typically, and then age 4. So that second booster you can give earlier for travels, and we do recommend it. And it can be given as early as 1 month after the first dose at 1 year. There are some options, whether you want to combine the chickenpox, the varicella with them or not, have that discussion with your provider. And then for hepatitis A and B, these are just liver inflammation vaccines that we give in the first year of life. Just make sure that baby has had all of that, or your toddler has had all of that. Now, hepatitis A, the second dose is usually given around 18 months, or sometimes it's given at 2 years. So just make sure that your 2-year-old has had it before you go. For typhoid vaccine, now your 2-year-old has an option at Allegro. They can get that injectable typhoid vaccine. And then for flu and COVID, we take it for granted here it's in the winter months, but it's not always true at every destination. So do check those guidelines and see if your child needs updated flu and COVID. One thing that you'll review at the travel health visit is that travel itinerary matters greatly because if you're going to rural areas, you're at risk for different things than if you're going to cities, or if you're doing both, definitely review both recommendations. In China, rabies is actually a high risk in rural areas. So avoiding contact with animals, especially with that toddler who will just run up to an animal, is really important. Good news is China was declared malaria-free by WHO in 2021, but mosquito bite prevention with those repellents that we talked about and other prevention methods are still important because They still have dengue, chikungunya, and something we haven't seen yet so far in this presentation is Japanese encephalitis. I won't go too much into detail, but it's highest risk May to October. So it's just one of those other things that you want to consider. There are vaccines available for some of these, but usually there's an age restriction. So talk about this at your visit. And then air quality in cities can be pretty bad sometimes. It depends on the day. Do consider checking in daily air quality index. And kids with things like asthma and other respiratory conditions, they are at higher risk for having an exacerbation. So if you want to do masks on those high pollution days, that would be great. And then don't forget to pack those inhalers and take them with you wherever you go if you're in the city. And then summer travel. Summer is sun and fun, but also some things to think about. Toddlers will get sunburned very easily and they get overheated very easily. So do use a sunscreen, 30 SPF 30 and up recommended. I like the physical barrier ones, like the zinc oxide ones, a lot more than the spray kind. And then sun protective clothing like hats and rash guards and long sleeve. These can help you to avoid having to redo that sunscreen over and over again. Especially with your toddler running away from you every time you try to do that. And of course, then you get to put a cute hat on your toddler, like my daughter's cute purple hat, which I still have. And then water safety is huge. Toddlers are at highest risk for drowning. And you can see over here on the top that my daughter is pretending to swim in the ocean, and her dad is watching her like a hawk because at any moment, something bad can happen. So keep an eye on her. For general toddler safety abroad, um, I think it's a good idea as you go into your new environment, your new accommodation, to do a safety walkthrough. Look for stairs, balconies, windows, anything where your toddler can get in trouble. Any cleaning products, medications, sharp objects, electronics, and cords and things like that that they can have access to and hurt themselves. And just sort of baby proof or toddler proof again, as you did in your home. For general safety, we did always need to bring a booster seat or some kind of a car seat or booster seat with us whenever we traveled. And I do recommend that you do this. You may not have easy access to that where you're going. And then toddlers do tend to, run away a lot and take your eyes off them for a second. So having that ID bracelet with your child's name and your contact information can really help in case that happens. And water safety we talked about, I think, so I won't go over that again. And one of the things when you travel with a toddler is their sleep is disrupted. They require lots of naps and, difficult to do bedtime anyways. So you might need to do a little bit of adjustment. Jet lag is very real for them. You would have to shift their bedtime about 30 to 60 minutes per day if you have that option. And then being active in the sunlight during the day can help with that circadian rhythm. And as much as possible, if you can maintain those bedtime routines, that would be very helpful. Don't try not to miss naps. You definitely don't want a hungry, sleepy toddler on your hands. So, um, that being said, you will have some disruptions. It's vacation. You're not going to be able to stick to a schedule. Be patient, be flexible, just hug them through their meltdowns, and then bring those familiar items. Those would help for sure. That was a very quick trip to China. And now it's time to go home. And you can see, even as a toddler, you can sort of entertain them a little bit on the plane. So, bring some cute headphones and something for them to watch on those long flights. So we're going to leave China, and now we're going on a very exciting safari to Kenya. And your child is now 8 years old, and apparently has a sibling, but we're going to focus on the 8-year-old. So this is summertime. So vaccines for Kenya, there are some additional recommendations. As always, remember to keep them up to date on their routine vaccines. By 8, thankfully, they've had a lot of their vaccines. They're very well protected. This vaccine, the meningococcal vaccine, is typically given around age 11 here as a routine vaccine, but there's higher risk in what is called the meningitis belt in Africa and sub-Saharan Africa. And some areas in like northern Kenya, different parts of Kenya, during the dry season, it is an increased risk. And this MenACWY vaccine can be given as early as 2 months, and it is available at Allegro. And then yellow fever vaccine, this is one that you really want to check the most up-to-date recommendations. Proof of vaccination is needed if you're traveling from certain countries, but not the US. It is still recommended, but I can think of a handful of countries in my mind where they will not let you come in unless you have proof of vaccination. And this can be given to children 9 months and older. Allegro is not able to administer the yellow fever vaccine, but Dr. Julie Wen, with a pre-travel consult, she can send a prescription to a local travel pharmacy and they'll be able to do that for you. And then typhoid vaccine keeps coming up over and over again. It is one of those important ones sort of traveling to tropical warm places. A booster is needed every 2 years. So even if you gave your 2-year-old a typhoid vaccine, they would need a booster again. And you can do this at Allegro. Now, they do have an oral vaccine available now after 6 years, but that can be a little difficult. Talk about whether your child can do pills and stick to it for a week. And then hepatitis A and B, just a review, just make sure the series is completed. Malaria is a little bit more of a consideration in Kenya. As you can see, if you remember the map from India, the Kenya map looks pretty much all red. So it's strong recommendation for prevention medicine as it is a high-risk zone for malaria. This is a medicine that you'll have to take it before the trip, start before the trip, take during, continue after. So there's lots of considerations, different options. So this is something to discuss during the visit. Bite prevention is still important because no antimalarial is 100%. And then insect protection is definitely a bigger consideration when you're on a safari. You have a lot more exposures than just mosquitoes. So just reviewing, use that DEET or picaridin, sleep under insecticide treated bed nets. And then when you're going for walks in the wilderness, just make sure that your body is as covered as possible. Tuck those socks into pants. And do inspect your child every day for ticks. And for safari specific considerations, um, safety becomes an issue, right? So 8-year-olds are able to have that conversation with you ahead of time. So if you prepare their mind to always listen to the guide's instructions and then never approach or feed on wildlife, stay in the vehicle when you're told, these are things that they can understand and just kind of reiterate those. And 8-year-olds, how many of 8-year-olds get to go on a safari? This is an exciting experience for them. If you keep them more engaged, they'll be less likely to stick their arms and legs out of that vehicle. Taking a binocular, journal, pen, pencil, these can be a really nice way to engage them. And they can do drawings that they can look at, 10 years down the line and really enjoy. I wish we were on a safari here, but this is clearly a zoo. But there's giraffe there, so I couldn't resist putting this in. And then for safari specific health considerations, if your child does get sick on safari, you may not be very close to the hospital or clinic. Do know where the nearest one is in case evacuation is needed, and then carry a well-stocked, age-appropriate travel health kit. Don't rely solely on the guide, just have your own supplies as well. For warning signs, because of those insect-borne illnesses, as well as the meningitis risk and things like that, which is a brain infection, look for high fever, severe headache, confusion, persistent vomiting. Those are things that need to be checked out right away. So if you need to evacuate, you need to evacuate. For travel days, expectations are a little bit different with 8-year-olds. They are a little bit more flexible, but they also get bored easily. You can no longer control what they're eating or drinking as closely, but you can tell them, hey, maybe chew the gum, you do some swallowing or yawning when you're taking off and landing. Remind them to drink water. Pack as much entertainment as you think you might need for that duration. Books, activities, games, coloring supplies. Now, I will say that there's something to be said about just looking out the window, as my daughter is doing here after exhausting all her entertainment the trip. Just enjoy. This is what the trip is about. Manage expectations, build in lots of buffer. It's not just toddlers. 8-year-olds can take some time to transition. Try not to overschedule. Just lower your expectations. They're still kids. But do involve them in the planning because they're perfectly capable of becoming really interested in the planning process and getting excited about the trip. And they'll have some really good ideas. I've had my kids change my travel plans sometimes. And then the more you prepare, the calmer you're going to be. Remember, the idea is to focus on the fun. We are saying goodbye to Kenya. What an exciting trip. Hope you made some good memories. So this is my final case. We are now no longer a child. You have an 18-year-old, very independent. They're going on an independent trip with their friends to Mexico. So now you're no longer the person driving everything. You're not the one who's going to execute the plan that you have. So this is kind of time to teach your child to take initiative and be involved in the process and be safe and just share that knowledge with them. So as part of that, to prepare your teen for independent travel, have them be involved with that pre-travel consultation with Julie One. Ensure that they understand their own medications, health conditions. They, have an ID or summary card in their wallet with their health issues. And then I think it's probably a good idea to think about travel health insurance and evacuation insurance. They may need it. And then, of course, always ensure they're up to date on their routine vaccines. And then typhoid vaccine, even for an 18-year-old, is a consideration. It is recommended for smaller towns and rural areas. If you're staying like in resorts and things like that, less of a concern, but to think about it. And then just prepare their mind, empower them to be safe. Have them share their itinerary with you. Have them check in regularly with family. I know this can be a challenge. I have a 13-year-old, but do your best. Let them know how important that is for safety in case something happens, to keep their digital and physical copies of important documents and passport. The phone and wallet, as much as possible, keep it on your body. Don't lose it. Don't leave it by the pool. Um, if they're going to do any adventure activities, have them be involved with checking the safety of these places that they're signing up for. It is best to stay in the well-traveled tourist areas, but we also want to balance that with enabling our teen to explore the world. And then food safety is an important consideration. They're going to want to eat from, every vendor they see. So just talk about the things they can do to be safe. Drink bottled water that is sealed, or purified in some other way. And then try to avoid ice, because ice is one of the ways that you can get those germs that you cannot assume that water is safe. Eat freshly cooked hot food. If you're going to eat from a vendor, just make sure they've just cooked it. Avoid raw or undercooked seafood and meats. If you're eating fruits and vegetables, then please cook it or peel it. And then wash your hands again with soap and water, if you can, but sanitizer is okay when hand washing is not possible. For mosquito precautions, thankfully, malaria is not a high risk, maybe some rural areas. So just, consider it. And then other mosquito-borne illnesses like dengue, Zika, they're kind of mostly coastal or tropical areas. I'm going to keep saying this over and again, DEET and picaridin, use your repellent. And then for sun protection, you're going to have to remind them that they need to carry SPF 30 or higher, reapply. And then they are never too old for a cute hat. And knowing when to get help can take some thought, so have a conversation with them about it. If they are having high fever, especially after insect bites to rural areas, or persistent or severe diarrhea or vomiting that is going on and on past 24 hours. If they've had some kind of in contact with an animal that bit them or scratched them, they may need rabies post-exposure prophylaxis. So something to keep in mind. And then, again, know your nearest hospital or international clinic. You were keeping track of this when they were little, but now they need to keep track of this. And then if they do have an insurance plan, see that they have the hotline saved if they have one. So you had all these talks and your teen enjoyed their trip and they're coming back home to you safely. And that sort of wraps up our last case. I just wanted to sort of do a final takeaway. Really, the key points are that if you prepare, if you do some thoughtful preparation, that will reduce your stress and it will reduce illness. If you can do that travel health consultation about 4 to 6 weeks out, it helps us plan all the vaccines and everything. Protect against those illnesses when you can. Do the recommended vaccines, talk about malaria prevention if needed. And then packing smart, those important documents, the passport and everything, a travel health kit. We talked about the contents of some of these. Make sure you have those with you. And then, of course, those comfort items, entertainment, snacks. Know your local resources. We are so happy to help you before you travel and after, but I wish we could help, but you're going to have to know what's around you. And then prevention is key for safe food and water safety for toddlers and Babies also, insect protection, sun safety. These are all things to think about and plan ahead of time. And every trip is different. As you hopefully have seen from all these different cases, that travel considerations vary with age and also by destination. Being aware of travel alerts and recommendations for your itinerary are really important to have a safe trip. And you've got this. And this is just an example of a travel health kit checklist. There is one available similar to this on our website. And then don't forget to pack those documents, IDs, emergency contact numbers, and really the most important thing, to have fun. Take lots of pictures. And these are just some resources. We already went over this, the websites that I shared